Um, Namaste. Uh, I know many of you, but I'll introduce myself nonetheless. My name is Shankar Subramaniam. Welcome to the second of this series of dialogues on Yoga, Vedanta and Tantra. The title and subject matter of today's discussion is Yoga, its true meaning and real purpose. So the purpose of these informal informational discussions is to present to both practitioners of yoga, students of yoga, and the general public the broader context in which yoga is practiced in India, and to show the connection with Vedanta and Tantra, the way it is practiced in particularly the Himalayan masters, the way they practice, and through that to give you a deeper understanding Thank you so much. So through that we hope to gain a deeper understanding of what yoga is really about. Okay. So the first discussion we had was on Advaita Vedanta about a month ago on the occasion of Sri Adi Shankaracharya's birthday. And so today I thought we will now move into the topic proper, which is yoga. Please feel free to ask questions if something is not clear. And I've prepared a few slides here which I'll try to go through, but I hope that they're helpful. So let me start with what we discussed last time was the connection of yoga to Vedanta and Tantra. So we started off with Hatha Yoga, which we looked at the source text, which is by Swatmarama, called something called Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And what we learned there was that Swatmarama clearly says that the purpose of Hatha Yoga is to attain the stairway to Raja Yoga. And so we looked at Raja Yoga. And we learned that Raja Yoga has these 8 rungs or ladder of 8 rungs. And asana, which we very often see in classes, which are postures or physical poses, actually constitute one of these 8 rungs, and only about 1% of the entire Yoga Sutra, which deals with Raja Yoga, only 1% is devoted to asana. So a lot of it is beyond the physical, and that's what I'd like to bring out today. We also learned from that discussion that the goal of Raja Yoga is to know Purusha. Purusha is the indwelling consciousness in everyone, and since Raja Yoga is based on a dualistic philosophy called Sankhya, Purusha is distinguished from Prakriti. So Prakriti is all that is not consciousness, is Prakriti, and Purusha is the consciousness. So it's a dualistic viewpoint. Now, the way Vedanta fits into all this is that Adi Shankaracharya showed that through his spiritual practice, came up with this non-dualistic idea that in fact it is attributeless consciousness that is the basis of both Purusha and Prakriti, in fact. So we started off by looking at things from the pinnacle last time. We understood what is Vedanta, what is Advaita Vedanta. So now we are going to come down to the foothills from those dizzying heights, because it is quite difficult for a beginning practitioner to directly understand Advaita Vedanta. It's not that you cannot read the source text, it's great if you can, but from a very practical viewpoint, if on a daily basis one needs to bring this into one's life, yoga is much more easy because it gives a practicum, it's a handbook. You might say that Vedanta is the theory manual and yoga is the practical handbook. How should I do this? So I hope that is clear to everybody where we are now starting. So today what I want to do is talk more about yoga, and we did have a little discussion on Tantra also last time. So, context established. I'd like to now change gears a bit and start with a very broad base that will have some meaning for everybody. Okay? So we have all heard of this thing called wellness. Aren't you bombarded by brochures about wellness at your office, at home, right? There's no end to this wellness. Actually, this wellness is a very recent concept, only about 50, 60 years old, I found out. And if you go, there are so-called dimensions of wellness. Okay? So if you go on a website, you can pull out social, occupational, spiritual, physical, intellectual, etc. So I'm going to say that I'll make a broad claim, and there will be some exceptions, and you can disagree with me afterwards. Okay? So I'm going to say that everybody approaches yoga with a view to enhancing their wellness in one or more of these dimensions. Any disagreement so far? No? Okay. So, that's great, but I'll make some observations. So, we have these dimensions of wellness. We are trying to use yoga to improve our quality of wellness in one of these dimensions. So, there are two parts to it. The first thing is we are using yoga as a means, right? Yoga is a method. And second observation I make is, we have already made a self-diagnosis of ourselves that my wellness is not optimum in some of these categories. We also have some concept of what is our optimum wellness in these categories. And so we've already conducted the physician role we have taken. We've done the diagnosis and told ourselves this is what is the case. Now, if you go back and actually read yoga, what you find is that yoga is both the means, but it's also the end. This is a very hard thing to understand without going back to the source texts. Okay? So yoga is not only the method, but it's also the end. And that will become clearer, I hope, as we discuss further. The second thing is, if you go to a medical doctor and the doctor tells you, gives you a diagnosis, you're always curious, is he diagnosing the symptom or is he diagnosing the root cause? Do you agree with me? Right? So we have to, when we do this diagnosis, my physical wellness is not good enough. My intellectual wellness is not good enough. Is it a symptom or is it the root cause? We have to answer that question, right? So let's now go and see what we can learn from the source text. So last time, when we looked at Vedanta, I said everything in Yoga, Vedanta, these darshanas as we call them, darshana being a revelation, they come from the Veda. Right? The root is the Veda. The Veda has some parts. There is something called Samhita, which are the mantra, Rig, Yajus, Sama. These are the mantras are sacred hymns that were recorded by the rishis or seers, sages in ancient India, many thousands of years ago. The most conservative, earliest date we have for this is about 1400 BC, but depending on scholars, you may go as far back as 5000 BC. The date is not so important, it's very ancient and it's the source. Now in the Veda there is a part called the Upanishad, which is the right handmost thing you see. Those are the philosophical essences that are distilled from these hymns, and they contain the philosophical wisdom that Yoga and Vedanta try to explain through their revelation. Fair enough? Okay? Everyone with me so far? So now we look at these things called darshanas, these revelations, or they're often translated as philosophy in Western literature. And among those we see 6. We already discussed Vedanta. Today we want to look at yoga. Okay? So now I told myself, suppose I want to know what is the meaning of yoga. Where should I look? Should I open the yellow pages and find some local yoga and go and ask there? Where would you look? Seeing what we have seen in the first lecture. Where should we look? Go all the way to the source, right? Go back to the Veda. Fair enough? But there's nothing behind that. There's nothing, you can't go beyond that. So, I'm going to start my discussion with a small excerpt from a famous Upanishad called Kathopanishad. Now, this Kathopanishad is a very beautiful Upanishad because it not only has a definition of yoga, but it's a nice story. So, I'll start, if you know the story, bear with me because some may not know it.